After the news spread throughout the company that the CEO's fiancé I had risked my life to save was going to marry her old flame due to an unexpected pregnancy, everyone thought that I, the jilted fiancé, would go mad with anger. However, even after their child was born, I hadn't caused any scenes. Instead, I focused all my energy on managing projects for the struggling company. My ex-fiancée thought I had finally accepted my role as merely a tool to manage her company. She smugly promised me, "Seeing as you're being so sensible about earning money for me and the baby, I suppose I can grudgingly keep you on at the company. I'll give you the opportunity to continue looking after us." But she seemed to be rather presumptuous. I wasn't working for her and the child. I was preparing to take over the company next week. From now on, I won't compromise by being the man behind her. Instead, I'll replace her as the new CEO. Ding! Story Shots reminds you to click the subscribe button at the bottom right corner to read the full novel. I had just finished discussing a project with a client and left the meeting room when I saw David Cartwright changing his and Aileen Thornton's baby's nappy at my workstation. "Mr. Cartwright, you really have it tough, working and taking care of the baby. When Ms. Thornton returns from her maternity leave, she'll surely give you a big promotion and pay rise. Indeed, when the little one grows up, there'll surely be a high flyer like Mr. Cartwright, a pillar of the company." The small room, no more than 5 square meters, was now crowded with colleagues from the project team. This used to be my office, but now it was filled with baby items, turned into David's nursery at work. Even the wall, once adorned with the awards I'd won for the company, had been cleared and covered with photos of the baby from birth to 1 month old. In fact, due to layoffs in recent years, there were quite a few empty rooms in the company. But David insisted that a feng shui master had told him only my office was best for the baby's growth. Everyone could tell this was just David's excuse to deliberately squeeze me out. But Aileen, who had always been a staunch materialist, believed it. She even asked me to move to a small cubicle next to the toilets, supposedly to shield her and David's baby from some negative energy. She showed not a hint of guilt about breaking her long-standing engagement to me and marrying David instead. Coming back to my senses, David had also noticed the newly signed contract in my hand and approached with a smile. "I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Goddard. I've been busy with the baby lately, and Aileen still needs a few more days to finish her maternity leave. I'm grateful you've been handling the business. I'll definitely highlight your contributions to Aileen later." Though David's words were polite, his right hand was reaching out to snatch the signed contract from me. In the year since David joined the company, he had taken advantage of Eileen's favoritism to steal many projects and achievements from me. Before, I always compromised and tolerated it for the sake of my relationship with Aileen. But now that Aileen had married him, I had no reason to put up with it anymore. I swatted his hand away. "David, you've already taken my fiancé. Are you trying to steal my hard-earned contract too?" Before David could respond, my colleagues rushed to defend him. "What do you mean taken? Mr. Goddard, that's a bit harsh, isn't it?" "Exactly. Mr. Cartwright is just too busy taking care of the baby to handle projects himself. He had no choice but to pass them to you. You're just a lucky freeloader. What right do you have to complain?" But I only felt the irony of it all. Yes, David had indeed brought in this project. But to prove himself, he had bragged to the client over drinks and falsely quoted the project at 60% of the original price. He may have secured the business, but he didn't care if it was feasible. In the end, I was the one who worked overtime to optimize the technology and even paid out of pocket to negotiate with suppliers, barely managing to reduce the costs. Yet somehow it had become David's achievement. Seeing that I remained firm, David smiled and said as long as the company made money, it was fine. But when no one was looking, he deliberately pinched the baby he was holding. The next moment, with a loud wail, the baby's mess splattered all over me. Even the contract I had just signed was ruined. "Oh dear, Mr. Goddard. I'm so sorry. I'm new to being a father and don't have much experience." My hand slipped. "Please forgive me." Seeing my gloomy expression, my colleagues naturally wouldn't miss this chance to show off in front of David. "Jake, how can you be upset with a 1-month-old baby? Have you no shame? With that nasty temper, no wonder Miss Thornton called off the engagement. You're no match for the gentleman Mr. Cartwright is. Hearing them mention the broken engagement, I couldn't help but laugh coldly. Aileen and I had been together for 7 years. We were engaged and about to have our wedding. But a year ago, Aileen's ex, David Cartwright, suddenly appeared. He was exceptionally hired by Aileen, and not long after, she hurriedly sent me on an overseas business trip. By the time I returned, I heard the news of their shotgun wedding. Rather than a gentleman, the term wolf in sheep's clothing suits him better. However, I had more pressing matters now and no time to argue with them. I calmly took a document from my drawer and threw the dirty nappy David had deliberately left on my desk back at him. I'm sorry. I've been working too much overtime and my eyes are tired. I meant to throw it in the bin, but my hands slipped too. Hope you understand. Instantly, a foul odor emanated from David's expensive suit. David's face turned green, but I didn't give them a chance to berate me. I left immediately with the document, drove to the company's house, and handed the file to the clerk. Please register this change in shareholder information. This was the share transfer agreement Aileen had personally signed 6 months ago, before I went abroad to negotiate a deal. Transferred all her shares back to me. Actually, the company was founded by me personally, with my own funds and technology, so naturally all the shares were in my name. A few years ago, when the business took off, I gave Aileen 51% of the shares to compensate her for the years of hardship she endured with me, fulfilling her dream of being a boss. In recent years, with the tough economic environment and the company facing difficulties, I planned to take back all the shares, preferring to bear the risks myself rather than let Aileen be burdened with debt. I thought this would be difficult and had prepared a bunch of excuses to convince Aileen, worried she might misunderstand my intentions. But the day before I left the country, when I approached Aileen, she signed without even looking and kept urging me to leave quickly. At the time, I even asked Aileen if she wasn't afraid I might cheat her. But she just smiled and helped me pack, saying we were about to get married, we were family, so there was no need to differentiate between mine and hers. Back then, I thought Aileen loved me deeply. I flew out that night, vowing to secure the deal and save the company. But when I successfully returned with the contract, Aileen was already married to David and had even given birth to a chubby boy. Only then did I realize she wasn't trusting me at all. She was already pregnant and in a rush to marry David, fearing I might notice something odd if her belly grew too big, which was why she signed so hastily and urged me to leave. But it works out fine now, at least the company is still in my hands. After verifying that the agreement was correct, the clerk suddenly asked, Mr. Goddard, for such an important matter as share transfer, why isn't Miss Thornton here with you? I calmly shook my head. She's still on maternity leave. Hearing this, the clerk was stunned for a moment, then congratulated me on becoming a father, cheerfully helping me process the public notice for the share transfer. But I couldn't smile, because I wasn't the baby's father, nor was I her husband. As I was lost in thought waiting for the approval, my phone suddenly rang. It was Aileen calling. As soon as I answered, a barrage of shouting came through from the other end. David just stained the contract. You could have asked the client to sign a new one. Why did you make such a fuss at the office? You scared the baby. Before Aileen could finish her tirade, the clerk had already brought the paperwork for me to sign. Sign. Jake Goddard. It's still working hours. Why aren't you at the office? Where have you gone? After signing, I finally explained, I'm signing an agreement. On the other end of the phone, Aileen paused. Then her tone softened considerably. That's more like it. Seeing how eager you are to earn money for me and the baby, I'll reluctantly let you stay in the company, giving you a chance to take care of us. But I wasn't listening to what she was saying at all. Looking at the new list of shareholders in front of me, with myself holding 91% and becoming the de facto CEO of the company, I couldn't help but smile. Aileen on the other end misunderstood, thinking I was overwhelmed with gratitude towards her, and said smugly, Look at how pleased you are. Keep up the good work, and when I return from the maternity center, I might consider giving you a promotion and raise." After a few more instructions, Aileen hung up with a laugh. But she didn't know that in 2 days, once the review period was over, I would be the new CEO of the company. I wonder if she'll still be able to laugh then. After successfully regaining control of my company, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. I headed home first, planning to pack my belongings and part ways with Aileen Thornton for good. As soon as I opened the door, a musty odor hit me. Aileen had been in the hospital for her pregnancy, then at a postnatal care center after giving birth. I'd been away on business trips, so the house hadn't been looked after for nearly 6 months. I was about to open the windows to air out the place when I stumbled over something in the living room. A large picture frame had been thrown on the floor. I picked it up and realized it was our wedding photo. I remembered how Aileen had insisted on going to the studio for a photo shoot after we got engaged. She had me try on dozens of suits, never quite satisfied, until she finally chose a white suit she liked after an entire afternoon of searching. Though it wasn't my style, I accepted it, thinking of how much effort Aileen had put into choosing it for me. I can still vividly recall the earnestness in her eyes back then. Coming back to the present, I wiped the dust off the frame, feeling confused. The wedding photo had always hung in the bedroom. Why was it lying on the living room floor? When I walked into the bedroom, I immediately understood. Above the headboard now hung a photo of Aileen and David Cartwright at their wedding. In the picture, a pregnant Aileen was nestled in David's arms, beaming like a girl who had just received everything she ever wanted. They were wearing the wedding dress and suit that Aileen had so carefully selected that day. It suddenly dawned on me why Aileen had been so dissatisfied after trying suits all afternoon, finally picking a white suit that didn't suit me at all. It was never meant for me in the first place. Over the years, my skin had darkened from working outdoors. The pure white suit Aileen chose looked out of place on me. But David, who had always worked in the office as Eileen's assistant, was fair-skinned and refined. The white suit made him look like a Prince Charming straight out of a storybook. I laughed bitterly and started to pack my things, planning to sell the house afterwards. This house was originally a wedding gift from my parents. Since the marriage was over, there was no point in keeping it. It would be better to sell it and ease the company's tight cash flow. But when I opened the wardrobe, I clenched my fists in anger. All my belongings were gone, replaced by David's shirts. I immediately messaged Aileen, demanding to know what had happened to my clothes. After about 15 minutes, Aileen replied, "Of course I threw them out. David's flat was too far from the office, so I told him to move in here. He's a neat freak and couldn't use your things, so I got rid of them. Besides, you bought all that stuff with the salary I paid you, so it was my money to begin with. I don't need your permission to dispose of it, do I?" I had to admit, Aileen had always had a talent for twisted logic. Seeing I didn't respond, Aileen sent another message. "What, are you upset about your old rubbish? I heard about what happened at the company this morning. If you hand over the project to David like a good boy, I'll buy you some nice new things and even let you keep a storage room to rest in." "No need," I replied, blocking Aileen on WhatsApp before she could type anything else. I called a junk removal service to clear out everything in the house. Then I listed the house for sale with an estate agent and checked into a hotel. Early the next morning, the junk collector transferred me the money. Although they only paid pennies per pound, it still added up to a tidy sum. It was clear how much Aileen doted on David, practically giving him the world. I was about to get up and wash when Aileen suddenly called. "Jake, who gave you permission to sell our marital home? Where are David and the baby supposed to live now? And what about his designer suits and gaming consoles? Where did you throw those?" Aileen was so angry she could barely catch her breath. I found it ironic. My belongings could be casually discarded, but David's things were precious. I calmly replied, "So you do know it was our marital home? Since you've married David, what's wrong with me selling it? As for the stuff in the house, it's all been sold for scrap." On the other end of the line, Aileen fell silent in anger. But soon, she let out a scornful laugh. "Jake, do you think selling the house means I'm out of options? Don't think I don't know what you're up to. You're just playing hard to get, using these petty tricks to get my attention. Know your place. You're just a tool working for me. Don't aspire to things beyond your station. With that, Aileen hung up. Almost simultaneously, David posted an update on social media. It was a photo of him signing a purchase contract at an estate agent's office. The caption read, "Finally have my own place in this city." David was just an assistant at the company with a modest salary. Given his extravagant spending habits, there was no way he could afford to buy a house. Clearly, Aileen had put up the money to buy back the house I had just listed. David's post was obviously meant to show off to me, but far from being angry, I could barely hold back my laughter. Although house prices had fallen in recent years, I had bought early enough that I still made a profit overall. In fact, Aileen had essentially handed over all the company's earnings from the past 2 years to me, and David was treating a depreciating old house like some kind of treasure. I treated myself to a lavish meal to celebrate, something I hadn't done in ages. The company's house also sent a text confirming that the change in shareholding had been approved. I was in high spirits as I prepared to return and take over the company. But as soon as I walked in, I ran into Aileen. "What are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be?" Before I could finish, Eileen's face darkened and she slapped me hard across the face. "Jake Goddard, as a senior employee? Is this how you set an example? Absent for 2 consecutive days. You're nothing but a black sheep. I didn't work hard to build this company just so you could slack off and collect a paycheck. Starting tomorrow, your performance bonuses for the next year are canceled. You're no longer a director either. Go and work under David Cartwright and learn how to be a proper employee." As I heard Aileen Thornton's punishment, the mockery from my colleagues was barely concealed. After all, it's a small company, and with David's exaggerations, I'd become the target of everyone's criticism. However, Eileen's accusation of absenteeism was completely baseless. Last month, I had applied in advance for a week of field work to pursue business opportunities, which didn't require office attendance. She had even personally approved it. In plain terms, this was just an excuse Aileen had concocted to help David get his revenge. Seeing me remain silent, Eileen's brow furrowed. "Jake, I'm talking to you. Are you deaf? Can't you see the baby's soiled his nappy? Go help David clean up, unless you want to suffocate the entire office." But I still didn't move. After all, I was now the owner of this company. Before I could speak, David stepped in, feigning kindness. "Aileen, don't be angry. Jake must be exhausted from his business trips. I'm young and energetic. I can manage both childcare and work without a problem." But before he could make a move, Aileen stopped him, full of concern. "No need. You've been so busy these past few months with paternity leave and childcare, you've lost weight. Besides, you've just been promoted and you've got the new project. Focus on preparing your presentation for the upcoming launch event. As for him, if he still wants to stay in the company, let him do some hard labor. It'll cure his laziness and show him how difficult it's been for you to manage childcare." Looking at the concern in Eileen's eyes for David, I found it absurd. David was nothing but a blowhard. At work, he dumped both childcare and his tasks on colleagues who tried to please him, while he hid in his office eating fried chicken and playing video games. Over the years, when the company wasn't doing well, I often had to go out and chase business myself. Even after a car accident, I went straight to sign a contract with a client instead of going to the hospital. Even the client was moved by my dedication. Yet in her eyes, I had become a lazy freeloader. Love and indifference were indeed too obvious. Coming back to my senses, I stared straight at Aileen and said firmly, "If I remember correctly, the company handbook clearly states that bringing infants to disrupt the office is not allowed. Moreover, I had already applied for field work in advance, which doesn't require office attendance. You have no right to punish me." In 7 years, this was probably the first time I had openly contradicted Aileen. Aileen was stunned for a moment, but she quickly sneered. "Jake, I admit, you've caught my attention, but you've gone about it the wrong way. I am the CEO of this company. If I say you're absent, then you're absent. As for those projects and client information in your hands, I've already had them backed up. Do you really think you're irreplaceable? HR, prepare his termination letter and notify all our partner companies to blacklist him for future employment. Just as HR was about to move, I stopped them. No need. I've already prepared the termination letters. David's face lit up with joy, but he still put on a regretful act. Jake, why are you being so stubborn? Why don't you apologize to Aileen? She's so kind-hearted. Considering you've looked after her for a few years, she'll surely make an exception and let you keep a job cleaning toilets. Beside him, Aileen saw me stop HR and raised her chin even higher. I didn't know you were so self-aware. How about this? Considering you've been a useful dog, as long as you voluntarily give up. Before Aileen could finish, I interrupted her and threw 2 termination letters to Aileen and David. Enough with the nonsense. You can leave now. Looking at her own termination letter, Aileen was stunned for a moment, then smiled contemptuously. What right do you have as an employee to fire me? I smiled calmly and produced the notice of share transfer and change. Ms. Thornton, not CEO anymore, you seem to have a selective memory. Look carefully. I am now the CEO of the company. As for you and David, due to violating company regulations, disrupting work order, and privately stealing confidential company project information, you are both fired, effective immediately. As Aileen Thornton's face drained of color, she stared at the black and white text on the shareholding change notice. Her pupils constricted as if she'd seen a ghost, and she pointed at me in disbelief. Jake Goddard, when did you become the CEO? But quickly, as if remembering something, she let out a cold laugh and snatched the notice from my hand, tearing it to shreds. Jake Goddard, you've grown quite clever, haven't you? Photoshopping an image from the internet, stamping a fake seal, thinking you can intimidate me? Who do you think you are? Do you really think you're all that? She looked at me as if I were a clown, her lips curled in mockery. David Cartwright immediately caught on, forcing a concerned expression onto his face as he took a step forward, feigning sincerity. Jake, mate, I know you're upset, but this isn't the way. Forging company documents is illegal. You could go to prison for this. If you don't want to leave your job, I could try to talk to Aileen for you. Why take this crooked path? His heartfelt advice prompted the surrounding colleagues to chime in. Yeah. Jake, have you lost your mind? You really think you could be CEO? A frog in a well dreaming of the ocean. I reckon Ms. Thornton and Mr. Cartwright's news has driven him mad. Tisk, TSK. Now he's not only lost his job, but he'll be spending a few years behind bars. Looking at the faces of these people, I felt a chill in my heart. I had thought they were merely blinded by Aileen and David's facade, temporarily choosing the wrong side. Now I see I was too naive. These people were nothing but a bunch of fickle opportunists without any judgment. No wonder the company's performance had been declining over the years. With such a group of employees who only knew how to engage in office politics and brown nose, how could it be otherwise? They were all parasites, good-for-nothings. Keeping them around would only spell disaster sooner or later. I laughed coldly to myself, my sharp gaze sweeping over the colleagues who were still chattering away. Oh, it seems you're all quite eager to taste what it's like to be fired, aren't you? My voice wasn't loud, but it carried an undeniable chill. Those who had been mocking me just moments ago suddenly fell silent, like ducks with their necks in a vice. Seeing this, Aileen thought I was bluffing, challenging her authority. Jake Goddard, you dare threaten my employees? I think you've truly gone mad. She pulled out her phone and dialed the police directly. Hello, officer. This is Ruijin Tower. Someone here is forging company documents, disrupting office order, and threatening employees. Please come quickly to deal with this. Hanging up the phone, Aileen lifted her chin even higher, as if already envisioning my sorry state being led away by the police. David also fanned the flames from the side. Jake, mate, if you apologize to Aileen now, she might soften. I just watched their performance coldly, without saying a word. Soon, 2 uniformed police officers walked in. "Who called the police? What's going on?" the older officer asked sternly. Aline immediately rushed towards them like she'd seen a savior, pointing at me with an agitated tone. "Officers, it's him. He was fired by the company, and unhappy about it, so he forged some CEO notice, causing a big scene here, and even threatened to fire other colleagues. He's seriously disrupted our company's normal operations. Please arrest him." As she spoke, she cast a smug glance at me, her eyes full of "you're done for" meaning. "Jake, did you hear that? The police are here. If you get down on your knees and beg me now with a good attitude, I might even help plead with the police for you. Write you a letter of understanding, get you a lighter sentence." Looking at her stupid, triumphant expression, I almost laughed out loud. I calmly turned to the police, handing over my ID and another intact copy of the notice. "Officers, I'm Jake Goddard, the new legal representative and CEO of this company. This is my identification and the industrial and commercial change notice that just took effect today. You can verify it in the official system." I pointed at Aileen and David. "As for these two, they've been formally dismissed by me for serious violations of company regulations and suspected theft of company secrets. I've just given them their termination letters. They're not accepting the dismissal decision, and instead are tearing up company documents here, shouting loudly, and interfering with other employees' work." The older officer took my documents and ID, while the younger officer beside him took out his police tablet and began verifying the information. Aileen, however, was unimpressed and snorted coldly. "Officers, don't believe him. It's all fake. Photoshopped. I'm the CEO. He's just a fired employee." A few seconds later, the young officer looked up, nodded to the older officer, and then walked towards me. Aileen immediately grinned triumphantly. But the next moment, the officer took out a cold pair of handcuffs and, with a click, fastened them around Eileen's wrists. Aileen Thornton was completely stunned, her mind going blank. She looked down at the metal handcuffs on her wrist, then suddenly raised her head to stare at the police officer, her face filled with disbelief and bewilderment. "Officer, what are you doing?" she stammered. "Why are you handcuffing me? You've got the wrong person. It's him. Jake Goddard is the one causing trouble. You should be arresting him." David Cartwright also panicked and hurriedly tried to explain. "Officer, there must be some mistake. Aileen is the company's CEO. We have employees who can testify to that." The older police officer's face remained expressionless, his tone unwavering. "We've already verified the information," he said, waving the police tablet in his hand. The screen clearly displayed the company's latest legal representative information. According to the most recent public records in the company's house system, Mr. Goddard is indeed the current legal CEO of this company. Since you two have been dismissed, you shouldn't be lingering here causing trouble and disrupting normal office operations. Now, please come with us to the station to give a statement regarding the obstruction of official duties and disruption of workplace order." With that, he nodded to the younger officer, who proceeded to handcuff the still-dazed David Cartwright. For a moment, all the colleagues watched this scene unfold with jaws dropped, utterly dumbfounded. After a pause, Aileen suddenly began to struggle, glaring at me with a crazed look in her eyes. "Jake Goddard, what have you done to me?" she shouted. "My company. How did my company become yours? When did you pull this off? You despicable bastard. I'll sue you. I'll take you to court for corporate theft. For fraud." David's face had also turned ashen. He tried to maintain his composure as he looked at me, his voice carrying a barely noticeable tremor. "Jake, mate, stop this now. It's not too late to admit your mistake," he said. "Forging documents, seizing company assets. If these charges stick, you're looking at more than just a year or two behind bars." Listening to their so-called warnings, I found it laughable. Even now, they still thought I had used some underhanded means? I let out a cold laugh and slowly pulled out another document from my briefcase. It was the share transfer agreement that Aileen had previously signed. I flipped directly to the last page, showing the signature to Aileen. There, clear as day, was her name, Aileen Thornton, signed in black and white. "Miss Thornton, oh pardon me, Aileen," I said. "It seems you have quite the selective memory. This share transfer agreement. You were the one in a hurry to have me help you clean up your mess. You begged me to sign it. It's all here in black and white. Why don't you take a good look for yourself?" My tone was calm, yet tinged with mockery. Aileen Thornton instantly lost her composure. "Jake Goddard, you did this on purpose, didn't you? You dug this pit and waited for me to fall in. To think I trusted you so much before. I handed over the company for you to manage. Is this how you repay me?" I looked at her contorted face, feeling utterly speechless. Trust me? Using me as a backup, as a tool? Enjoying my efforts while secretly carrying on with David Cartwright? Is this what she calls trust? She's the fool who signed documents without reading them, and now it's my fault? Miss Thornton, you can eat carelessly, but you can't speak carelessly. It's in black and white. You signed it yourself. Did I force you? Did I trick you by saying it was a different document? My calmness thoroughly enraged Aileen. "I'll kill you, you thief." Like a mad woman, she broke free from the young police officer who hadn't yet reacted, and lunged at me with claws outstretched. Her nails were sharp, seemingly intent on leaving marks on my face. Unfortunately, she overestimated herself and underestimated the police officer's reaction speed. The older officer took a step forward, twisting her arm behind her back and firmly restraining her. "Let go of me. Let me go. He's a fraud. He stole my company. You should arrest him." Aileen continued to struggle frantically, shouting abuse. The older officer frowned, clearly losing patience. "Take her away," he barked, no longer paying attention to Aileen's cries. The younger officer quickly stepped forward, and together they dragged the still squirming and struggling Aileen out, showing no mercy. David Cartwright's face was ashen, escorted by another officer, his eyes hollow as he followed behind. He seemed to want to say something, opened his mouth, but in the end, it only turned into a dejected sigh. Click. The glass door of the office closed behind them, shutting out all sound. After a brief silence, the crowd began to stir. "Mr. Goddard, I always knew you weren't an ordinary person. I saw right through Aileen Thornton and David Cartwright, those two scoundrels. They've been oppressing you all this time. We've all seen it and it pained us. Yeah, Aileen Thornton and David Cartwright threw their weight around. We had to go along with it or we'd lose our jobs. That's right, we were actually on your side all along. Please be magnanimous and don't hold it against us." Suddenly, voices pledging loyalty, shifting blame, and begging for mercy rose one after another. I spoke slowly, my voice not loud, but clearly audible throughout the entire office. "Are you all finished?" The clamor stopped abruptly. Everyone looked at me nervously. Those who joined Aileen Thornton earlier in personally attacking me and disrupting company order, as well as those who have been two-faced, secretly funneling benefits to David Cartwright and lining their own pockets. "You're all fired. Starting now. Pack your things and leave the company immediately." The entire office exploded in an uproar. "Jake Goddard, don't go too far. We've all worked for this company for so many years. We may not have made great contributions, but we've put in the hard work. That's right. You can't just fire us like this. What about compensation? According to labor law, if you fire us without cause, you have to give us 2 months severance pay. There are so many of us. If you dare to act recklessly, we'll collectively file a complaint with the employment tribunal. We'll make sure this company can't operate for even a day." The crowd that had just been groveling suddenly became agitated. They relied on their numbers, thinking that since I had just taken over the company, I wouldn't dare to make a big fuss, let alone offend so many people at once. I calmly asked in return, "Who told you I'm firing you without cause?" Did you really think that all those things you've done were so flawless that no one knew about them? As I spoke, I took out a black USB drive from my briefcase, walked to the computer at the head of the conference table, and plugged it in. The projector lit up, and folders quickly appeared on the stark white screen. I casually clicked on one. Inside were detailed account statements, email screenshots, and even several covertly recorded surveillance videos. The contents directly implicated several department heads present, colluding with David Cartwright to abuse their positions, falsify project expenses, take kickbacks, and continuously siphon off company profits for personal gain. I didn't stop there, opening several more folders in succession. Each folder corresponded to a group of people. Some were accepting bribes from suppliers using their procurement authority. Others were leaking core technical data to competitors. Some were using company resources to take on private jobs externally. Case after case, it was shocking to behold. The entire office fell silent, with only the hum of the projector fan remaining. I had grown suspicious long ago when David Cartwright parachuted into the company and profits began to decline abnormally. Even with Aileen Thornton's backing, a kept man couldn't possibly erode the company's profits so severely in such a short time. I had been investigating secretly for a long time before discovering this web of corruption woven by David Cartwright, which implicated so many mid- and high-level executives in the company. They colluded and covered for each other, forming a massive interest group that gnawed away at the company's foundation like termites. No wonder Aileen Thornton was so easily marginalized before. No wonder David Cartwright could act with impunity in the company. Looking at the evidence cycling on the screen, those who had just been clamoring for compensation and threatening to sue me now turned ashen-faced one by one. "I'm giving you one last chance," I said coldly. "Submit your resignations now, pack up your things, and get out immediately. I can pretend none of this ever happened, and these materials won't end up at the police station. If you insist on dragging this out with me." I waved the USB drive in my hand, my voice icy and devoid of emotion. "Then we'll see each other in court." As my words faded, there was a moment of silence. Then, as the first person tossed away their work badge and stumbled towards their desk with bowed head, others followed. The second, the third. More and more people began silently gathering their personal belongings, fleeing like they were escaping a plague. No one dared mention compensation again. In less than half an hour, the once bustling office became eerily empty. Only 7 or 8 people remained standing in place. I remembered them. When David Cartwright was making things difficult for me at every turn, it was they who had helped me either openly or discreetly. Though few in number, it was enough. The company needed streamlining anyway, and cutting out these parasites was perfect. It even saved a large sum in severance pay. I looked at the few who stayed behind, showing my first genuine smile since taking over the company. "From today, this is our new beginning," I said. "Everyone, let's stay motivated. The road ahead is long, but we'll work hard together." After a few simple words of encouragement and arranging follow-up work, I dove into the mountain of documents. Cleaning house was only the first step. There were still many messes waiting for me to sort out. Before I knew it, night had fallen outside the window. People gradually left the office until only I remained. Rubbing my throbbing temples, I sighed as I looked at the empty office. It seemed I'd have to make do on the office sofa tonight. Just as I stood to find a blanket, the glass door of the office was suddenly pushed open from outside. I instinctively looked up. A familiar figure stood in the doorway. It was Aileen Thornton. I furrowed my brow, my voice devoid of warmth. "What are you doing here?" Aileen Thornton's face bore a smile I had never seen before, cautious and ingratiating. She was carrying an elegant food container as she walked in. I brought you something to eat." She placed the container on my desk and gently opened it. Several homemade dishes steamed inside, their aroma instantly filling the room. "Seeing you working so late, I thought you might need a proper meal. Too much takeaway isn't good for you." Her voice was soft, deliberately tender. I couldn't remember the last time I had eaten a meal she had prepared herself. Once upon a time when we were just starting our business, living in a cramped flat. We were so busy we barely had time to eat. She would do this then too, bringing me varied dishes she had made. She'd remind me that health is wealth, while watching me wolf down the food, her eyes full of concern. Back then, her eyes had a spark, hope for the future, and for me, I shook my head, dispelling these ill-timed memories. Seeing my prolonged silence as I stared at the food, a glimmer of hope flashed in Eileen's eyes. She thought my defenses were crumbling at the sight of her home cooking. "Jake, I know I was wrong before," she began. "It was all that bastard David Cartwright's fault. He deceived me with his sweet talk, blinded me to the truth. I've seen his true colors now. I'm in the middle of divorce proceedings with him. Once the divorce is final, I'll give you back that marital home right away. Jake, please, give me one more chance, won't you?" She reached out to touch my arm, her eyes pleading. Seeing no response from me, she picked up the chopsticks, lifted a plump prawn to my lips. "Come on, eat while it's hot. The prawns are so fresh. Have some more, it'll do you good." Her actions were so natural, as if we were still that devoted couple from years ago. If only. There's no going back. I looked at her coldly, at the prawn mere inches from my face, and swatted the chopsticks from her hand. Eileen's hand froze in mid-air, the smile on her face instantly vanishing. She stared at me in disbelief, her eyes quickly welling up. Is the food not good?" she stammered. I tugged at the corner of my mouth, giving a mocking smile. "Eileen Thornton, have you forgotten? I've been taking medication for my stomach issues lately. The doctor specifically warned me not to eat seafood. It could cause a dangerous reaction with the medication." The color drained from Eileen Thornton's face in an instant. She stammered. "I'm so sorry, Jake. I forgot. I really didn't mean to. It was just a momentary lapse." "Forgot?" I laughed bitterly to myself. She hadn't forgotten. She had never bothered to remember in the first place. After all, during the worst period of my stomach illness, her eyes and heart were only for David Cartwright. When had she ever cared whether I lived or died? Eileen continued to apologize frantically. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll order you some takeaway right now. What would you like? Some mild rice porridge? Or something to soothe your stomach?" I cut her off, my voice devoid of any emotion. "Don't bother." Eileen's whole body trembled, and tears finally began to stream down her face. She clung desperately to my legs, sobbing uncontrollably. "I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. Please, forgive me just this once. The baby, I've already taken care of it. Let's pretend it never existed. It won't be an obstacle between us anymore. And David, I've reported all his misdeeds to the police. The evidence is irrefutable. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison. He'll never bother us again, Jake." She looked up at me with tear-filled eyes, full of hope. "As long as you forgive me and let me come back to you, I'll do anything. Really, anything at all." But I only felt a wave of nausea in my stomach. To win me back, she could do such a terrible thing to her own child and betray her former lover without hesitation. What else would this kind of person be capable of? I forcefully shook off her hands and stepped back, putting distance between us. Looking at her kneeling on the floor, her face contorted with tears, I felt nothing but utter disgust. Soon, 2 security guards rushed in, grabbing her arms on either side and forcibly dragging her out. Only when she disappeared through the doorway did the office return to silence. After that night, I never saw Eileen Thornton again. I threw myself completely into the company, cleaning up the mess, reshaping the corporate culture, expanding into new business areas. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. The company gradually climbed out of the quagmire, regaining a solid footing in the industry even more stable than before. The next time I heard news of Eileen Thornton was through a police report. Apparently, David Cartwright had been released early on parole for good behavior in prison. The first thing he did upon release was to find Eileen, who was working in a small restaurant. He ended her life with a fruit knife. The reason? Probably hatred for her betrayal back then. When I heard this news, I was in the middle of signing a new partnership agreement. I didn't feel much of a reaction, just a faint, almost imperceptible sense of melancholy. In this tumultuous world, the passions of foolish men and resentful women ultimately amount to nothing. Perhaps living alone isn't such a bad choice after all.